sound of a diesel, right? That's not just any diesel. That's a rare breed of Caterpillar in an on-highway truck, the V8 3408 motor in livestock hauler Troy Boelman's 1979 Peterbilt 359. A 302-inch wheelbase unit I got a close look at out at the Crossroads Truck Meet early last month in Missouri. At overdriveonline.com, you'll find a video featuring the truck's original 3408 engine. Likewise, a 66-inch double Eagle sleeper put behind the original day cab ordered Pete when it was brand new by Huck Huckabee, before owner-operator Boelman bought it in 1991. Troy Boelman's had it ever since, and it's a well-preserved piece of trucking history, no doubt. I'm Todd Dills, and for today's edition of Overdrive Radio for June 2, 2025, we'll hear my conversation with Boelman about the truck's history. But the bulk of the podcast dovetails to another owner-operator brain trust in the Trucking Solutions Group. Long a regular conference call meetup between a bevy of owners aimed at business improvement and sharing. The TSG lent us all a window into their decades of combined experience at the Mid-America Trucking Show this year, where Landstar rep Bob Bailey moderated a panel discussion with TSG members focused on questionable choices and successes. They called it, quote, failing to succeed. Owner-operator and TSG current Chairman Joel Boelman set up the discussion with a slide that showed a chart with two columns. You can see that slide in better detail in the post that houses this podcast at overdriveonline.com/overdrive-radio.
There's going to be two columns up there. One is not how we failed, it's questionable choices.
There in that questionable choices column were factoring service use, change in carriers, using a dispatch service, ignoring advice, holding on to a wide variety of trailers, forcing company growth, microblue transmission, going or returning to particular freight areas, and quote-unquote over-analysis.
Everything we do should have a purpose to try and improve our business. The other column is we would definitely do it again and recommend it to do again with anybody else.
And in that column was one item that was also in the questionable choices column, namely changing carriers, but also purchase of an aerodynamic truck, the switch from company driver to owner-operator, Idaho base plates, wide base single tires, e-logs, joining a group like TSG itself for sharing advice, use of quality microfiber towels, and doing minor maintenance yourself. On many of those topics, then you'll hear in the podcast the voices of, in addition to Boelman, owner-operator Mark Hegestad and team owners Stephen Halstead and Sandra Goshi. As noted, that of moderator Bob Bailey,
Sandy,
too.
are you able to change your blinker fluid?
Every day.
Awesome.
Failure is an opportunity, ultimately, to learn from mistakes made, illustrated in so many ways throughout the TSG discussion. Owner-operator Joel Boelman then recounted a story that illustrates the real value in continued improvement with successes that can result. It's a standout story among many told there at Matt's.
I was at the fuel island the other day, and my truck is only about that far off the ground here, the front fairings and the side fairings. It's all Ferrero. Gentleman parked next to me with an international Landstar, and he just jokingly said, kind of hard to get under there and grease it, isn't it? And I tapped my belly and I said, oh yeah, I got to have special ramps and get it up in the air, or I got to start at the back and crawl the way up. And then he did look at me and he goes, well, what are you getting for fuel economy? Well, with this new trailer, I'm down to 7.5. He kind of looked at me and he goes, wait a minute, you said you're down to. I said, yeah, before when I was doing a straight flat, I was getting 8.25. And he kind of went, Well, a little while later, we're standing in line at the cashier getting our sandwich and cookies and drink, getting ready to go. And he looked at me and he goes, real quick in my head, I just figured out every year you're spending $10,000 less for fuel than I am. I go, yeah, that could be. Well, in 10 years, that's $1 million.
After the break, then, we'll dive into that discussion. First, though, a window on the long career of livestock hauling owner-operator Troy Boelman and his 1979 Peterbilt 359, powered by that Cat 3408 V8 you heard at the top. That truck's been retired for years now, but don't get too excited. he's not planning on selling anytime soon either, as you'll hear.
High heat and low lubricity can break your diesel fuel down fast. Summer driving means crowded roads, more stress, dust, and a bigger risk of costly engine damage. Howe's Diesel Defender protects from the inside out, cleaning, lubricating, and fighting injector wear before it starts. And now, choose a size that fits your ride. 64-ounce, 32-ounce, and the all-new 15-ounce for diesel pickups and smaller tanks. Warm weather's here. Defend your diesel with Howe's. Available at retailers nationwide and on Amazon.
Here's a big thanks to Howe's for their continued support of Overdrive Radio. You can find information about their full line of diesel fuel treatments and other products via howesproducts.com. That's HOWES. howesproducts.com. Now, Troy Boelman from the site of the Crossroads Truck Meet, May 3rd in California, Missouri.
It's got a V8 Cat 3408. Extended hood, and then a 6 and a 4, 66-inch double eagle sleeper, 302-inch wheelbase now, and I've owned it I bought it in 91, and I trucked in it for 18 years, and then times just got hard. Well, fuel, everything got so expensive. The whole motor's been good. I mean, we overhauled it, out-of-framed it in 97 or 8.
Okay.
And then drove it till 06, something like that. So, and didn't do a whole lot to it
Since then.
But then now it just sits in the shop, so it doesn't get much. Change oil on it once in a while, and fuel filter and that kind of stuff.
You guys did some work to it recently, I guess.
Did the valve covers, put the valve covers on recently.
Okay.
And just tried to clean it up a little bit. I'm going to try to do a little more this summer.
And you guys bought this from the original owner who kind of, I understand he's got a
Bit of a history.
and he's well known out there.
Yeah. Daryl Huckleby. He called him Huck, but
Okay.
that's he's still on the internet. He's still out there a lot. He's still on Facebook a lot. Still tells stories, and they're probably all true. He may exaggerate it a little bit on a couple of them.
All right.
But he's a lot of fun to be around. When I do this truck when I was growing up, when he first got it done, I'd have been 16, and I wanted it then, and it, like I said, it come up for sale, and long story short, I ended up with it.
You had just seen it.
Just seen it out and about when I first seen it. When he first got it done, he had this, and he had a matching reefer painted green just like it, and a brand new Chevy pickup painted green just like it. When it was all sitting together, you thought, that guy's really got it together.
Something to aspire to, right?
Yeah.
He had it painted just pretty much like this.
Yeah, they painted it one time in the mid-'80s.
Yeah.
Painted it back the same color. And I like the color and that paint job. That's how old it is. We redid the hood once.
Okay.
But from there back is all the original paint from the 80s, from like 86, 87 when he had it done.
Right.
It's like I say, it's got some battle scars on it, but we've used it a lot. So, yeah, did the rear suspension, stretched it out longer and put a late model. It's a 2000 model suspension under it. Low leaf Peterbilt suspension under the bag. So we did that, back in the mid 2000s, I guess, is when I did that. And like some mechanical, we did lots of mechanical stuff. Yeah, we rebuilding stuff I remember. But
The sleeper interior and the interior,
it's all
pretty much original.
Yeah, it's original. Yeah, and it was all done in double eagle in Indiana when they put the sleeper on, and he ordered it new as a day cab.
Okay.
And it came in without this cardboard interior in the cab, and they took it out there and cut the hole out and put the sleeper on, and then made all the matching interior for the cab out there. Did all the the stereo and all that, because the stereo is in the sleeper on this wall here. And then that's the speaker boxes. Yeah, it's really in pretty good shape. We've tried to keep it in good shape anyway.
Sure.
Well, the interior is pretty neat, and they did a nice job on it. And like I say, it's still original. We've never had to do any interior work on it. Right. It still has the original 1979 seats in it. We just had them upholstered when Double Eagle did it, and that's what come in it when it was just the old freight hauler type seat. And he had them redone. I never did take them out. I just
left them in there.
Yeah, I like them, and they held that one. This one on the other side's wearing pretty good, but for 40 years, that's not bad.
Yeah, and that's not even is that air ride seat?
This one isn't. The other side is.
The other side is.
Yeah. We did replace the base on the other side because it was so wore out. But this was just a toolbox. Yeah. And that's you could order it that way. And it's got a chrome wheel in it, or chrome steering column, tilt wheel, and he made all that. He made the tilt wheel part. And all this little stuff's off of old cars.
Okay.
That he found.
It's around the window frame and the window latch.
It's a 30-some mile car.
You're still trucking today?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tell me about your other truck. Is
It's a 97 model W900L model.
Yeah.
And it's got a 100-inch Double Eagle sleeper on it. Still haul cows. And haul a lot of cows out of the west, out of Colorado and Wyoming. And I'd like to go back to driving this one someday, but it's just too much. Too expensive. Well, the maintenance on it would be, I'd hate to tear it up now.
Yep.
But yeah.
And it's from the vintage that it was built, I guess?
Yeah, it's an E-model cat with an 18-speed, but we stretched it out and put new suspension under it and everything too. I can't leave nothing alone like that. I got to do something to it.
You were talking, I think, before we got to talking about speed.
Yeah. Yeah.
People being in a hurry, and this truck probably runs sweet spot is probably about 55 miles an hour, if I'm going to guess.
Yeah, I don't know. 60, 65, yeah. Real honestly. I mean, the speed limits back then was 55. A lot of times across Oklahoma and Kansas, it's 55 mile an hour. It's like, we're going to get across here. And you could run faster, but I wouldn't want to go out and try. Like the speed limits in Wyoming now is 80 mile an hour.
Yeah, wow.
And I wouldn't want to try to run this truck like that all day long. Once in a while out playing around is one thing, but trying to run that all day long is a little much. But it's got 160 mile an hour speedometer. But it won't do that. But it'll go 100, but I wouldn't drive it like that very long either.
These motors are kind of a rarity.
Yeah.
Were back then, right? When were they offered? I think
they were offered. Now, don't quote me for sure, but like from somewhere in 78 till 85 in the Peterbilt, 359, and like in the Kenworth, I think it was from 78 to 82 in the A model Kenworth. And I don't know, they just really weren't a very efficient. Well, they're a good motor. They just, I don't know what to really say, but I like them.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people that still like them, but they're not a money-making motor.
Yeah. You're not getting the best fuel mileage out.
No.
What did you get out of this thing typically back in?
If you drove it really, really conservative, you could get 4, a little over 4.
Oh, wow.
But you was probably more 3.5 to 4 more often than if you were ever in a hurry. It was below 4.
Yeah, that's even a few years after that with the 3406 mechanicals do a lot.
But when that B model Caterpillar come out, these were just, it did so much better, run better, got better fuel mileage. So so much better of a motor.
Yeah.
As far as the truck width.
Right.
Or if you wanted to make or needed to make money.
Sure.
I just wanted to play. So, and then I finally grew up and realized I got to turn this into a business and
Sure.
start doing something a little more responsible.
When did you buy that Kenworth?
I bought it in 2014. So I parked this one and I had a T600 with a Detroit for a little while, and then I couldn't do that. I needed a little bigger truck than that, so I bought that L model in 2004. I've had it a little over 10 years.
Well, it's a beautiful piece of history for sure.
Well, thank you.
I'm glad to have come across it. And,
Yeah,
man, so
I've had it. I guess I'll have it. We've talked about selling it, but I probably never will. It'll probably be in my shop when I'm gone. The kids will. The kids grew. My two girls grew up in it. I'd just throw them in there, and we'd just go trucking and tell them to grab a bag, and we'd be back when we got back. And
right.
So they're kind of attached to it. And this is the only truck they ever went with me in, so it's the only one they care about. When I started trucking in 1986, in October of 1986, my firstborn was born in June of that same year. And I went trucking, and I've never seen him since. Seems like, other than when they
went out with you.
Yeah. They went quite a bit when they was little. I was leased to Dampier Incorporated when I pulled a reefer for a little bit, and then another Hendricks Livestock a little bit. But most of the time, I just had my own authority.
Gotcha.
I got my own authority now.
Gotcha.
And in the May 29 release story at the custom rig section of overdriveonline.com. Switching gears, here's owner-operator Joel Boelman again, getting the Trucking Solutions Group's panel discussion on the East Hall show floor stage going at Matt's in March. He first poses the question of what 2024 felt like business-wise for the owners assembled, setting the stage.
Who thought 2024 was probably the toughest year they ever had in their business? Well, there's a few. Now, the opposite. Best year ever was 2024. Yeah, I didn't think so. Bob, it's now up to you, I guess, unless somebody has that first question.
So this is about failing to succeed, what we can do better to succeed in our business. 2024 was a very, very, very difficult year, but a lot of folks did very well in 2024. So how did they do it?
Again, as a reminder, that's Bob Bailey, longtime with Landstar, with his fourth year assisting the TSG as moderator of the group's Matt's panel discussion. He pitched his next question to Stephen Halstead and Sandra Goshi, team owner-operators leased to Landstar.
Steve and Sandy, you've been with Landstar for several years now, 7, 8 years. Toughest year?
Toughest year.
Okay. Yep. What did you do to keep the gears moving?
Lowered my expectations of the rate that I expected to make for the truck. I have all my numbers figured out, exactly what, down to the penny, what it costs to run the truck. And then I have an amount that I want to make over that to be able to put money away. Okay, there's your basic expenses on the truck, but then you've got to put money away for those rainy days. Maintenance, tires, all that type of stuff. So I had to kind of lower our expectations and actually kind of run some freight where we had to almost take money out of our pocket just to get us out of an area, to get us into a better freight lane. So you just have to kind of make that decision. And also the other thing that we did is we did a lot of moving of ourselves out of our own pocket to get over into where the freight was, where we saw the freight was.
All right, Mark, what about you? Good year or bad year, 2024?
It was probably, if it wasn't my worst year, probably my second worst year.
That's owner-operator Mark Hegestedt.
But I think the key, kind of follow up with what Steven said, is I think 90% of the owner-operators out here, when they first get started, they forget about the concept of operating costs. Now, when I say operating costs, it's one thing to figure out what it costs for the truck. But what if you're single, got an apartment, got a house, maybe got a parking area you got to pay for, or you got a shop that you want to rent to be able to work on your own equipment. That all has to go into your operating costs. You have to be able to find a way to pay yourself. So I think the key is whether you're going to get started now or you've been doing this for several years, is I think people lose concept of that. Now, I heard earlier in some other presentation that was just ahead of us, about deadheading. And as Stephen said, sometimes you take a little money out of your pocket. Now, that might be misleading in a way that, are you really taking money out of your pocket? You really need to be strategic on where you're going to go. For instance, say I get unloaded on Monday afternoon at 2 o'clock. I got a chance to get to a reload that might be 400 miles. And I'm going to use the example, we go to Florida quite a bit. I can pick up a load in Florida. Might spend a couple hours getting it loaded. Got to drive half the night to get to where I'm going to go. And my reload might be in Savannah, Georgia, for instance. And I get up there and I get unloaded, and it takes half the day to unload. I might lose out on that really good load that's sitting up there that I really wanted to get. So kind of calculate your miles, figure out what you're going to have for time in, see if it's actually worth doing. Maybe you're better off to just go. And yeah, that's where the concept you might have to take a little bit out of your pocket to get there. But at the end of the day, you probably get better by knowing what your cost is, what the miles are that you're putting on, if that makes sense. Over.
Joel, what about you?
2024 was pretty hard on me. I run pretty much a single lane from Kansas City to Minneapolis, same freight, same pickup, same drop, loaded both ways. And I'm pretty steady about being home on the weekends. This is one of the times of the year I'm not. With the rate drop and the railroads, and that's the freight I haul, having slowed down just like trucking did, they didn't break locomotives as often, and my freight slowed down tremendously. Fortunately for me, I turned old enough, I started drawing Social Security, and I ended up having to dip into those funds. Also, fortunately for me, my truck and trailer are paid for. So I didn't have that cost, and that helped me survive this year. So if you are able, get one or the other paid off and keep alternating as you go along.
So, Joel, for us, we're just one piece, so we pay everything off at one time. As an expedite straight truck.
Yeah, that's true. You don't have the trailer.
All right, we're going to go back and forth from questionable to do it again. And I want to go to do it again. And one of them is driver to owner operator.
I worked as a government contractor before I got into trucking.
Right. Yep.
The voice of Sandra Goshi there, with Stephen Halstead, owner-operator of the expedited straight truck leased to Landstar you heard Stephen mention a moment ago.
My work area was down in the computer room next to the computer, so I had no windows. So I actually got to see sunlight becoming an owner-operator. And we were just fortunate enough that we were able to go from working computer job to being able to go into trucking right away. Didn't have to go through the company portion of it.
And Mark, in your words, what are the advantages of an owner-operator versus a company driver?
I would say for me, the biggest thing is I have a fairly flexible schedule, but I have to coordinate that with the customer. Right at first, you have to work with the broker to be able to have that time off. But there is flexibility, so that is a definite advantage. If for some reason an emergency happened at home, and I needed to get home, I have to work with it with myself and the broker. That hasn't happened very often, but I would say the biggest thing for me is the freedom to have a flexible schedule, but it comes with a lot of headache and it comes with a lot of discipline. Meaning you got to make sure that when you need to be out there working, you're out there working. Like myself, I have a dedicated customer. When they've got work to do, we have to be willing to go. Now, they're not demanding saying, well, we need your truck every Monday or anything like that. We have a pretty good relationship. but there's a trade-off. Even though you got the freedoms, you got to be there when your customer needs you. Over.
All right. I want to flip over to factor services. So, Joel, could you tell us a little bit about factoring and why do you have it listed as a questionable choice?
We put that up as a questionable choice because you can get locked into some of the factor organizations. And when you broker a load, that broker has to send it to the factoring. And they're going to take their percentage cut. And Mark experienced what took you about 3 months to maybe 6 months to get out of your factoring company and losing 10% on every load. So, and this past year, 10% meant a lot. So if you, as early owner operators, if the broker offers a quick pay, you will be better off doing that than going through a factor company, in my opinion. Also, I've always been a lease operator, and I let the company that I was leased to take care of that. Come Friday, I had a paycheck going to the bank.
As Joel said, I had a pretty rough experience with that. And, there's a lot of different ways I can go with where the issues were on that. As you all seen in the last 2-3 years, we've seen a lot of trucking companies go bankrupt. We've seen brokers go bankrupt. But more importantly, we've seen a lot of fraud. And I'm talking a huge amount of fraud. I've actually been blessed enough. I got alerted on a couple under my MC number that I got stopped before it ever happened. But I know there's some large carriers here that it's happened to, and I've heard the horror stories with that. But as Joel said, most factoring companies will sucker you into saying, well, 1.5% and fuel discounts and 2%, 3%. Then there's some that you got to do a minimum monthly revenue. And my biggest experience that caused me to go away from it is due to the fraud, some of the brokers weren't paying right away. The factoring companies had to go verify all the invoices. They had to verify all the PODs, the bill of ladings, get with the broker to confirm all that. Sometimes it took 2 days. Sometimes it took a week. And you get into the factoring because it's quick and convenient. I'll admit, when I first got started, it was a great tool. Today, my suggestion is, you've got the credit, go to your local bank. Work with your local banker. I saved 9% of my brokering fees by going to my local banker. I have maybe a handful of brokers that are 30 days, but I would say 30 to 50% of my brokers are quick pay, meaning I can get paid in a couple hours, next day. And I'm going to use Landstar, for example, where I've built a really good relationship with them over the years. They have a quick pay program, a fuel discount program that you can get as an outside carrier. Their quick pay costs me about $5 a load. You do a $1,000 load, $5, is what it is, 0.5%. You do a $2,000 load, it's still about $5. And it's in my bank account in 48 hours. And I get the luxury of being able to go off of their fuel card and use their fuel discounts that they offer us. I can get tire discounts. So look at other avenues versus the quick convenience. Don't let that sales pitch get you caught up in doing what's convenient because you think that's the only way to be successful. There's other tools out there. Now, I'm not going to say factoring companies are all bad. Do your homework and see if there's ways to do better.
If you are going to use a factoring company, what is a reasonable percentage that one should have to pay? You mentioned 10%. That's outrageous.
I would say if you can get in that 1.5% to 3%, but go for a factoring company that has a non-recourse. Now, what I mean by non-recourse, let's just say you find a load on the load board. You get a hold of your factoring company, they will verify if the broker is legit and worth doing the freight for. And if they are, go back to that broker and say, hey, I see you got $2,000 on that load. Ask for another $200. Guess what? That's 10%. you're going to give up 3% for factoring. But you get approved and they say there's no recourse. Now you just made 107 by asking for more money. Now, is that broker going to always give you more money? No, but 3% of $2,000 is, I take that back. You got about 140 because you give up $60 at 3%. So if you give up $60, but you get an extra $200, you just put 140 in your pocket and you covered that fee. And you don't have to worry about the factoring company coming back at you to get the money because they didn't get paid by the broker. So that's part of the reason they charge a little higher percentage, knowing that they're going to get paid. And they're doing the homework to go get that money if they don't get paid. So that's where the reason that they charge the fees that they do. But I can tell you there's a couple of factoring companies here that are pretty reputable.
So on the do it again side, we have, I'm going to jump down to the bottom, doing minor maintenance. One of the biggest factors that we see is an individual will have major problems with their truck. They bring it in, it's going to be in the shop for 2 to 3 weeks. In many cases, they don't have money for that repair. What can drivers do to avoid that situation? Sandy, suggestions?
Do the simple repairs yourself. I can even change windshield wipers. You can do it on a car, you can do it on a truck. It's just higher up in the air. So if you have room for oil changes, you can do oil changes. The lights, you got a light that goes out, you can replace lights. I've got my own built-in mechanic, so I don't have to do a lot of that stuff.
Sandra Goshi is referring to her team owner partner there, Stephen Halstead, of course.
I hand the stuff up to him. I'm the gopher or hand it up to the person.
Sandy, are you able to change your blinker fluid?
Every day.
Awesome. Glad to hear it.
Maintenance for me became so important. When I first got my first truck, I literally was outside in a snowbank trying to fix wiring on my trailer. I shorted out. I decided right then and there I needed someplace inside. And I ended up buying a shed, and almost 30 years later, it was the best investment I ever made. When I bought it, it was one I had started in 30 years before that. So I knew it was a good truck shed, and I thought I would never fill it. Now I've got 2 more outside storage sheds, but it grew. Changing your own batteries, fairly simple. I went to even doing all my own tire work, buying the tools. If I needed it once and had to borrow it from somebody, I was probably going to need it again. Did I have to have top of the line? No. And I am a big fan of that latest big box store for men called Harbor Freight. Tire tools. I even got down to wheel seals. Recently had an axle end, started leaking, did my own work. And fortunately for me, if I need the advice of a mechanic, I can call my friends at my local Freightliner dealer and say, hey, Arlen, help me out here. What do I need to do? Or what's the torque spec? So have a good mechanic friend willing to help you out also helps. And it'll save you an awful lot of money. You know, right now, I think it's $200 an hour just to go into the dealership for any kind of work.
For the whole panel, do any of you set aside a portion of your settlement on a regular basis for maintenance and repairs?
Absolutely. I set aside, I started when the truck was brand new, I started at 5%. And then every year, I increased that percent.
With that time-honored advice, it's Expedited owner-operator Stephen Halstead. Some owner-operators approach it on a cents-per-mile basis. An example in our Partners in Business owner-operator career playbook in the equipment and maintenance section shows a formula starting at 5 cents a mile at new, escalating to 15 cents per mile and higher at 5 years or older.
So they went to 6, 7, 8, and I got all the way up to 12, and I felt that we were good at 12 because I was well ahead for paying for maintenance. So in brand new, you've got a warranty. You've got the warranty to depending on what truck you have. Ours, it was 50,000, 500,000, sorry, on the engine and 700,000 on the transmission. So you start bankrolling that money for when it goes out of warranty, and now it comes out of your pocket. So yes, I started at 5% and then worked all the way up to 12%. And then I felt at that time we were out of our warranty at that time. So then I felt comfortable with the amount of money that we had there to keep going just at 12%, not increasing anymore. And now we have 800,000 miles on the truck, and I could actually transfer money possibly out of that line item, budget item, to somewhere else if I wanted to, but I'm leaving it there because of the mileage.
I'd like to add to that I started putting money aside for two reasons. Number one, I don't care if you have a brand new truck, you're going to spend money on maintenance. You know, it may be under warranty, but there's going to be something that you're going to fix on your own. Plus, start saving that money. You can call it maintenance money or the next truck fund. It's the same thing. If you don't use it for maintenance and that fund builds up and up, then you've got your paid off truck plus that money to go in and buy your next one, which is going to keep your loan on the next truck further down, keep your payments the same, pay it off faster, build that money back up again. So, and then you got a nice kitty, and when you're finally in your last truck, you're not going to buy another one. You've hit the point like I am. I'm in my retirement truck. I'm not going to get another one. And I'm at the point where I know I'm going to start spending more money on the truck in my shop, which also means I'm going to spend more time with my truck in my shop.
On the questionable choice side, you have listed, Joel, over analysis time. Can you explain that, and why is it a questionable choice?
Over analysis. Everybody says you have to figure out to the penny where you are and how much you're making. Well, if you're into that, good. I know some guys I can call up, one of the people I've mentored, and within about 35 seconds, he can tell me exactly how much in the last month he's spent on fuel, how much he's spent on maintenance, and how much it is per mile. Now, on the flip side of that, there's me. I know that I'm still making money because my checkbook is going up and up and up in amounts. And I know 2024 was really bad because my checkbook amount kept going down and down and down. But I knew I was still making money. You can overanalyze. If you spend way too much time at it, go have some fun. You know, for me, that's playing with an old antique tractor.
Now, Steve, earlier you had made comments about your how much it costs you to run your business and what have you. Do you agree with this, or do you have a different thought on that?
I would agree with Joel, but each person likes to kind of maybe not dig as deep as I do, or they like to do just the level that Joel does. I am a numbers person. I built a spreadsheet that I basically keep track of everything in. So once I got the spreadsheet, all you have to do is put the numbers in. So it's a kind of a one and done, but it's also living, breathing, because there's always changes. Case in point, our straight truck when we first started didn't have a lift gate. So we went from the carrier that we were with, we went to Landstar. Well, Landstar, we found that we could make more money, more loads with a lift gate and a pallet jack. So that's something, living, breathing. I didn't have a column for a pallet jack. So put a column in for a pallet jack. So I can tell you, going back to the beginning of this truck, by year, by month, what it costs to run the truck. And I didn't break it out in 6 months or in quarters, but I did monthly and I did yearly. So I can do that, and also on a fuel mileage. I can tell you what by month and by year what our total fuel mileage was, and calculated that also on, because we bought the truck and then we started adding some aerodynamics to it. So I could actually see by the month, the first month what it was, and then the next month see what it was. But the only problem is we weren't running the same route. That's where you come back and find out that the numbers don't work. I will say, I'll go over on to the questionable choice on this. I tried to do something and majorly failed in my spreadsheet. We came from government contracting, and they always talk about what you got paid by the hour. So I wanted to know how much we were making by the hour. And the meaning by that is when we started the load, when we ended the load, and we started at this time and we ended at this time. I found in Excel I could not go over a day. It would not know if you started today and finished tomorrow, it would not know. If you started today and didn't finish until Tuesday because the load was fat and you had to sit on the load, it wouldn't work. I tried. Went out on some forums, asked people, and they came back and said, we've never been able to get it to work. Microsoft even answered me once and said, we've never even had anybody really try that. So I failed at that. Also, we would forget to write down when we left and when we finished also. That's our fault. I mean, if you don't have good data to go in, you don't have good data coming out. But that was a major failure that I spent too much time trying to get it to work.
Where are you on this topic?
I'm kind of in between. I do run numbers. Don't get me wrong. I do try to keep the numbers to where at the end of the year, say, for instance, you go to the accountant and says you got to pay a little bit more in taxes. Well, maybe the tax rules changed a little bit. That's always a possibility. But maybe you had slightly less revenue. So you look at last year's number, shows you had slightly less revenue. But what else went down? If freight goes down, guess what else typically goes down? Fuel costs go down. Maybe you're running less miles, so you don't have as many oil changes, for example. Maybe you're not buying as many tires. So at the end, maybe you had a slightly higher profit margin because of those costs changing. So I think it's very important that you keep track of the numbers. Don't necessarily have to be right to the penny, but you need to have a good handle on it. Because if you see something going up in price, what's causing it? Maybe you went with a different brand tire and you're not getting the mileage out of it, so you have to spend more on tires, for instance. Or maybe your fuel costs went up because maybe you started running a different lane. We've seen it with a couple of our trucks. There was one quarter where they made about 4 runs out to the West Coast, out to California. My wife takes care of the fuel bills every week, and she goes, we went from $6,000 to $8,000 a week in fuel, for instance, because they were running out west. The cost goes higher. When that cost goes higher, guess what else needs to go back up again? Your freight rate needs to go back up. So you do need to keep a handle on your numbers. And as owner-operators that we are, Joel he's in the retirement stage, wants to be home spending time with his tractors. Guess what? It takes money to buy them tractors. Maybe he needs to make a little bit more money or whatever. Myself, I like to take a lot of fishing trips or spend time with my kids doing livestock shows. It takes money, so maybe you got to run some higher freight.
One more thing, we've talked about analyzing what our business is doing. Another way to look at it is overanalyzing what you think could improve your business, but you don't get around to it. Buying something that's going to increase your fuel economy. Buying that non-aero truck versus an aero truck. Going from one brand of tire to another brand of tires. Sometimes, you can think about it, overanalyze it, and then 6 months later, you finally do it and realize you should have done it right away because you're making more. So it's got to have a balance of analyzing what you want to do, where your business is at, and making that improvement. I've got a Cascadia all aeroed up. I modeled mine pretty much after Henry Albert's with Team Runstone.
That's a reference there to Team Run Smart, Freightliner's long demonstration program of real-life aerodynamic and other improvements owner-operator Henry Albert and several others put into their trucks and businesses with a mind toward sharing it with the wider public. Owner-operator Albert's been laser-focused on aero for many years and is a past Overdrive Truck of the Year, winner back in 2007 in my early time working at Overdrive here. Joel picked a good example there for sure. Albert's been known to push 10 miles per gallon depending on the load and route consistently.
I was at the fuel island the other day, and my truck is only about that far off the ground, the front fairings and the side fairings. It's all for aero. Gentleman parked next to me with an international Landstar, and he just jokingly said, "Kind of hard to get under there and grease it, isn't it?" And I tapped my belly and I said, "Oh yeah, I got to have special ramps and get it up in the air, or I got to start at the back and crawl the way up." And then he did look at me and he goes, "Well, what are you getting for fuel economy?" Well, with this new trailer, I'm down to 7.5. He kind of looked at me and he goes, "Wait a minute, you said you're down to." I said, "Yeah, before when I was doing a straight flat, I was getting 8.25. And he kind of went, Well, a little while later, we're standing in line at the cashier getting our sandwich and cookies and drink, getting ready to go. And he looked at me and he goes, real quick in my head, I just figured out every year you're spending $10,000 less for fuel than I am. I go, yeah, that could be. Well, in 10 years, that's $1 million. Yeah. You know, I think I'd enjoy having a problem trying to get under your truck to grease it for $10,000 a year. So that's my story with aerodynamic trucks.
All right, Mark.
Yeah, as Joel said, I copied Henry Albert's truck as well. And it was interesting about the time that I'd already looked at Henry Albert's truck here at the show. And unbeknownst to me at the time, I had been to the same Freightliner dealer that Joel got his truck from. And I was getting some service work done. Or I take that back. My dealer had let me use a demo truck. And I had a clearance light go bad on the demo truck. So I pulled in the clear light quick. And while they were getting that taken care of, I noticed this pamphlet laying in the driver's lounge. Again, I didn't realize it was Joel and that he was from northern Iowa, about 50 miles from me. But it was talking about the fuel economy he was getting with a flatbed. So this demo truck I used, pulling the same freight I currently do today, I took it out and I came back. And I averaged 8.25 miles a gallon. Well, as Joel said, it didn't take me long. Again, like I said, I talked to Henry. And while I was here at the truck show, he hooked me up with Joel and we got to talking some more numbers and stuff. And I looked at the price of the new truck. I looked what it was going to cost me, and I looked at what I was doing at the time. Mind you, I came out of a truck, another Freightliner, not as aerodynamic as I have now. But I did the math. At 1 mile per gallon improvement, it paid 33%, a third of my truck payment for the new truck. And then I looked at what I was spending on maintenance, because I was at the point I had no warranty, so forth. Looked at the cost of the warranty on the new truck. Technology advances. I looked at how often I was going to be doing oil changes. I was doing a third of the oil changes with the new truck that I was currently doing with the old truck. Guess what? The oil change prices were within $50. Of the old truck to the new truck, the oil change price only went up about $50. But I went to 3 oil changes a year versus 10. Did the math. Guess what? I don't have to work quite as hard.
I do want to point out, though, that everybody on this panel knows exactly what their mileage is. And we talked about over-analysis, but I think that's very important to know what you are getting and then how you can improve it. So, job well done. And I hope everybody in the audience knows that as well. And if you don't, that is something that you should know and you should track on a regular basis.
The easiest way to put more money in your bank account is to buy less fuel, and the fuel you buy has to go further. increase your fuel economy, because that's money you just doesn't go out of your pocket. That's the easiest way to get your bank account, your checkbook balance to go up.
The other thing that you don't want to do is you don't want to idle. One, burns a lot of fuel. Two, on these new trucks, they don't like to idle, because then you end up a lot of regens. So look at different ways of being able to not idle when you're parked. As an expediter, sometimes our loads are far and few between, especially like last year. So we sat a lot. Thank goodness we had a generator. So the generator doesn't burn as much fuel, plus the maintenance on it is much less than that big engine. So we have a generator. We also have an S-bar heater in the truck to actually heat it during the winter. And then we have a roof air conditioner that runs off the generator. And the heater will run you out of there in massive heat. And then the air conditioner, you think you could hang meat in the sleeper. So look at other ways besides the truck itself, the big engine, of saving fuel by not idling. Over.
Another question. Is anybody here paying full price at the pump?
Absolutely not. I know I check 3 different fueling apps, plus my own company. Several years ago, the company decided they were going to keep part of their discount. So I went to buying all my own fuel, and I will use pretty much one station because I like one particular route, and that's the cheapest, or not the cheapest, the highest quality fuel for the price I can get. That's another thing you need to watch out for. You can buy fuel for maybe a nickel less per gallon, but if your fuel economy drops doing that, it costs you money. So figure out one station that you like or one chain that you like and use that fuel.
So with us, we're at Landstar. So we use the Landstar discount. We have, with the Trucking Solutions Group, we have looked at other discounts, and they don't come anywhere near what Landstar does. But yes, when we first got the truck, we did experiment to find out what the truck liked to run on to give us the best fuel mileage, and we found the chain that it likes to run the best on, and we now have that lifetime averages. During the summer, we're at about 11.1, and then during the winter, it drops down to about 10.9, 11 because of the winter weather. Just you use more fuel, but it's lifetime at 800,000 miles and 11.1.
As Joel said, and also being part of the group, which is a benefit, we all communicate, we build relationships with different brokers or other information that's out there. I got about 4 different fuel cards / apps that I use. They're out there. But, going back to that, building a relationship with a broker, there's some brokers that, I got 2 of them, 3 actually, that I work with that offer me a fuel discount. And, you got to look at the apps continuously. Every day you got to look at them. I get an email from a couple of them every day because the price does change. But maybe this card today's got a really good discount, and card B doesn't have the same discount. But then tomorrow, card B's got a better discount than card A. So you got to do your homework and look at that. And that's where maybe the numbers game comes in. Pretty important, especially at fuel, because as Joel said, the bottom line, fuel is the easiest one to cut costs.
The 2 that I use, Mudflap and Wex 10.4, and they're both here. If you don't have those apps, I highly encourage you to go check it out if you're spending your own money to buy your fuel. Even if you have a company card, check those prices against the company.
Members of the National Association of Small Trucking Companies, I'll say, too, see a pretty big fuel discount benefit from NASTIC's program. One of the principal reasons so many owner-operators have joined that association over the last decade or more. NASTIC's a sponsor of our Small Fleet Champ program. Entries are open for the next couple of months to compete for the title belt. That's at overdriveonline.com/2025 SFC for Small Fleet Champ. Fleets of 3 to 30 trucks are eligible to enter and compete. To close out the panel discussion, Bob Bailey asked just why changing carriers was on both the questionable choices and would do it again sides of the ledger. Joel Boelman started the responses with this story.
Years ago, I fell in love with a dedicated run. It was from Chicago back into Iowa. And this was back in my cowboy days before an ELD. And I could run all I wanted to. In fact, I knew how to make the logbook show my fueling stop when I actually did it. It just showed me going the wrong direction. And when one carrier lost it, I went to the next one that still had it. And I stayed there way too long because the second carrier had dropped the rate. And I liked the people I was at the shipper, I liked the people at the receiver, but I didn't like myself, and it hurt me. So not changing carriers was bad, but then I had to change carriers to make it better.
When I first got into it, I started out at the hot shop, leased to a little small company out of Indiana, and then I got hooked up with a private carrier with a different setup. I call it a wedge trailer for hauling cars and campers. And then I got my own authority, and then I needed to get into a big truck for the customer I currently have. And in order to do that, I made the mistake of trying to buy the gentleman's MC number without doing my homework, and that went south. So then I had to lease to a couple of carriers. And partway through that process, unfortunately lost my father due to health issues. And he always had to go drilled into my head to try a local job to where I could be home every night and weekends with my family. Tried that for about 14 months. And again, I didn't do the homework that I should have and went backwards a little bit financially. Got my truck that I had before I did that job. Got it back together and put it on the road. I was leased to a carrier out of Oklahoma for about 6-7 years. And that's when I run into Henry and Joel. They worked me through the process to spec out a fuel-efficient truck and get me to where I am today. And I reinstated my authority back in 2020, and it's probably the best thing I ever did. Granted, it came with a lot of hiccups, a lot of bumps in the road. Do I regret doing any of those things that I ever did? No. Even doing the company job, I don't regret doing it because I learned something from it. And as our topic title is, fail to succeed. You tried it, didn't work, tried what does work. But it wasn't easy. By no ways, any means, shape, or form was it easy, but I'm super excited to be where I'm at. But I think the key at the end of the day, wherever it is you're at, build good relationships and have patience. Patience is key. I know we got a mutual friend out here that's listening to us today. I've heard it out in the parking lot this year. I've had a couple of people say, well, I feel stupid. No need to feel stupid, because you know what? We've all started very similar places you have. Maybe not in the same place, but very similar situations. If you don't ask a question, that stupid part is not asking the question, because you can't learn if you don't ask.
It's very expensive changing companies because you give your 2 weeks notice at your previous company, and all of a sudden you're not getting loads. You might as well just wrap it up and go on vacation for 2 weeks, which you can't afford. Because from that point until you probably get into your new carrier, you're at least a month without getting a paycheck. At least. Sometimes longer. So you got to think real hard whether it's worth making the change.
Everybody wants to think about what it costs them to change a carrier. I've had some owner-operators lease onto me. And I had one here this summer that was with me for about 3 months. I can tell you right now, it hurt me as a carrier. Not only for maintenance, but the amount of time I took away from my normal business to be able to get them trained to do what I do, what is required of us. So if you're going to make a change, have the dedication to give that new carrier a minimum 1 year of your time. They have so many lanes, so many routes, and such a huge investment in you to take you on to work for them to represent their company as a carrier. So it's a two-way street. You know, everybody's quick to say, "Well, I'm losing money." Just remember, the carrier you're going to is making a huge investment and accepting you as an independent contractor.
And that's a wrap. That last voice was owner-operator Mark Hegestad, joined by Stephen Halstead and Sandra Goshi and Joel Boelman. Here's a big thanks to the Trucking Solutions Group for access to their continuing conversations around owner-operator business improvement. You can find them at truckingsolutionsgroup.com and information about their regular conference calls at the Trucking Solutions Group Facebook page. Find plenty more ideas browsing Overdrive's own business improvement program and Partners in Business at overdriveonline.com/PIB. You can browse the revamped business manual there, now in a dynamic online format. Now, before we head out of this Overdrive Radio edition for today, let's hear it one more time. Find plenty of views of livestock hauling owner-operator Joel Boelman's 1979 Peterbilt 359 in the custom rig section of Overdrive at overdriveonline.com/custom-rigs or visit youtube.com/overdrivemag. We'll post those links in the show notes wherever you're listening. Overdrive Radio is on Spotify and SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts and YouTube, Overdrive's Facebook page, and any listening platform, really. Leave us a review there if you're enjoying these, and a big thanks in advance for that. And as always, big thanks for listening. Overdrive Radio is a production of Overdrive, the voice of the American trucker. It's edited and produced by me, Todd Dills, with the acoustic guitar and other support of trucker-songwriter Long Haul Paul Marhofer. The theme is Legend of the Snake Man by Marhofer, featuring the guitar work of Travis, the Snake Man himself, Whammick, Terry Two Socks Richardson on bass, keys by Tishomingo Jim Whitehead, and on drums, Andrew Marshall. The podcast is backed up further by Overdrive's own social media coordinator, Jasmine Campbell, senior editor, Matt Cole, executive editor, Alex Lockey, and video editors, Lawson Rudisell and Andrew Gwynn. We'll see you next time.